I got drunk and admitted that I had aborted our baby 7 years earlier, and my husband learned the truth while our adoption application was open between us on the table. By then, I had spent most of our marriage telling him I wanted children someday. What I really wanted was more time with him before he discovered that my someday meant never. When Daniel closed that blue folder, I understood that he was not only ending an application, he was taking his future back from me. The folder had arrived that morning from the adoption agency. Daniel set it on our kitchen island as carefully as if there were already a child sleeping inside it. He had completed every section that belonged to him: employment history, family references, the story of how we met. He even marked the places where I still needed to sign. That evening, our friends Marcus and Alina came over for dinner. They had known us since our wedding, and Daniel wanted them to be 2 of our references. He cooked short ribs. Alina brought a lemon cake. I opened wine before anyone asked for it. I was 36, Daniel was 38. We had been married for 9 years, and every person close to us had heard some version of the same promise from me. First, I wanted to settle into my career, then we needed a house, then Daniel's father was sick, then I was not sure I could handle pregnancy. Adoption had been Daniel's answer to the last excuse, and I had said yes because yes bought me more time. By dessert, I had finished most of the second bottle. Alina touched the folder and asked what had finally made me feel ready. I laughed. It was not a nervous laugh, it was meaner than that. I looked at Daniel and said, he doesn't take no for an answer. I already got rid of 1 pregnancy and somehow we're still doing paperwork for a baby. Marcus stopped with his fork halfway to his mouth. Alina's hand came off the folder. Daniel did not look shocked at first. He looked as if he had missed a word. You did what? He asked. I should have stopped. Instead, I heard myself say, it was years ago, you didn't even know yet. His face changed then. He looked down at the blue folder, found the page with both of our names, and drew 1 clean line through his signature. Then he closed the folder and pressed his palm flat on top of it. We are not bringing a child into a marriage where I don't know what is true, he said. He did not raise his voice, he did not call me a murderer, he did not ask our friends to take sides. He simply moved the folder from the center of the table to the empty chair beside him. I tried to turn the sentence back into a joke. I said I was drunk. Daniel said, drunk is why you told me, it isn't why it happened. That was the moment the room stopped belonging to me. Marcus and Alina left without eating the cake. Alina put her arms around Daniel near the front door, then looked at me as if she wanted to say something and could not choose a version that would help. Marcus took the open bottle of wine off the counter and poured it down the sink before they went. Daniel carried the folder into the kitchen. He did not slam it down. He placed it beside his laptop and opened the agency website. Tell me before I call them, he said, did you want this adoption? I stood across the island from him and gave him the answer that had protected me for years. I thought I could get there. He waited. I added that I loved him. I said I had been scared when I got pregnant. I said the timing had been terrible. None of those things answered his question. Did you want this adoption? He asked again. No. He closed his eyes just for a second. Then he asked whether I had ever wanted a child. The honest answer was no. It had been no when I was 29 and staring at a positive test in the bathroom at work. It had been no when Daniel spent weekends repairing the spare bedroom because he thought we would need it eventually. It had been no every time I squeezed his hand at a friend's baby shower and whispered, maybe next year. I had treated no like a dangerous thing I was entitled to hide. I believed that if I said it clearly, Daniel would leave, so I gave him delays instead. Delays sounded temporary. Delays made him patient. Delays kept the marriage I wanted while quietly removing the future he wanted. I don't think I did, I said. Daniel turned the laptop toward himself and typed a message to the agency. He read it out loud before sending it. We were withdrawing our joint application because we were not aligned about becoming parents and could not offer a stable home. There was no accusation in the message, no private detail. He protected me from strangers while I stood there trying to decide whether protection meant he might forgive me. When he clicked send, I asked if we could talk in the morning. We can talk in the morning, he said, but you don't get to make this smaller overnight. Daniel slept on the sofa in his workroom. I stayed awake in our bed and built arguments. The abortion had been my medical decision. That was true. I had panicked. That was true. I had been afraid he would pressure me. That was not true, but I practiced saying it anyway because fear sounded more forgivable than calculation. Daniel had never controlled my body. When I told him I did not want to combine our finances until after the wedding, he agreed. When I said I wanted to keep my last name, he ordered new address labels with both names. He wanted children, but he had never threatened me over them. I had imagined the threat because it allowed me to call deception self-defense. The pregnancy happened 18 months after our wedding. I had missed several pills during a week of work travel. When the test turned positive, Daniel was in Indianapolis helping his father recover from heart surgery. I called my older cousin Rebecca, not my husband. Rebecca drove me to the clinic. She asked twice if I was sure about the abortion and once if I was sure about not telling Daniel. I said he would turn one mistake into the rest of my life. She told me secrecy would not disappear just because the pregnancy did. I accused her of judging me. She stopped talking after that. Daniel came home 2 days later with hospital cafeteria receipts in his coat pocket and exhaustion in his face. He brought me a mug from a highway rest stop because it had a painted red cardinal on it, and cardinals reminded him of my grandmother. I was still cramping when he handed it to me. He asked why I looked pale. I said food poisoning. That was the first lie. It should have been the largest. It was not. A year later, Daniel was offered a training position in Denver. The job paid less for the first year, but he wanted it because it would move him from commercial construction into teaching apprentices. I told him we should stay close to family if we were serious about having children. He turned it down. I remember being proud of how reasonable I sounded. I even made a list of nearby school districts as if I were already thinking like a mother. Daniel thanked me for reminding him what mattered. 3 years after that, he wanted to start trying. I told him I was almost ready. I had a contraceptive implant placed without telling him and let him believe my irregular cycles were stress. We were not timing anything or visiting fertility clinics. He thought we had agreed to let nature decide for a while. I knew nature was not being invited. That was the part I could barely say the next morning. Daniel sat at the kitchen island with the cardinal mug in front of him. He had found it at the back of a cabinet. I had not used it in years. He did not ask for every detail of the procedure. He asked when I knew. He asked who had helped me. He asked whether I had been using birth control while telling him we were leaving the door open. I answered each question: pregnancy, Rebecca, the implant. He stared at the mug while I spoke. So there was never a door, he said. No. And when I turned down Denver because you said we needed family nearby. I wanted to tell him that he made the final decision. I wanted to point out that nobody had forced him to stay. That argument arrived in my mind fully dressed and ready to save me. I did not use it. I knew I was using children to keep you here, I said. He pushed the mug away so gently that it barely made a sound. Daniel went to work that day. He designs lighting systems for public buildings, and there was an inspection he could not miss. The ordinary fact of him putting on his boots nearly broke me. I had imagined betrayal produced a dramatic pause in the world. Instead, he checked the weather, found his keys, and asked me not to call him unless there was an emergency. At 10 that morning, the adoption coordinator called me. She had received Daniel's email and needed my confirmation before closing our file. For a few seconds, I considered telling her we only needed a short pause. I could hear myself forming the polished explanation: sudden family stress, a misunderstanding, a private issue that would be resolved. Then I looked at the line Daniel had drawn through his signature. I told the coordinator the application needed to be closed. I told her I had agreed to adoption without being willing to parent and that Daniel had only learned the truth the night before. She was quiet, then thanked me for being honest before a child had been matched with us. That sentence gave me no comfort. It was not supposed to. I signed the withdrawal page and sent it back myself. Daniel did not come home after work. At 7, he texted that he was staying in the furnished room above his brother's garage. He was safe. He needed space. He would come by Sunday afternoon to discuss the house and bills. I called anyway. He declined the call and sent one more message. Please let one thing happen because I chose it. I put the phone down. For the next 3 days, I did what I had always done when consequences approached. I prepared a version of events that made my choices look inevitable. I wrote Daniel a long email about the pressure women face around motherhood. I wrote that pregnancy had made me feel trapped in my own body. Both things were true. Then I wrote that I had hidden the abortion because I loved him too much to lose him. That was the old lie wearing a clean dress. Love had not made me hide it. Wanting control had. I wanted Daniel's loyalty without giving him enough truth to decide whether our lives still fit. I deleted the email before sending it. Then I called Rebecca. We had barely spoken for 2 years. She answered on the 4th ring and said my name like she had been expecting the call since the clinic parking lot. I told her Daniel knew. All of it, she asked. I said yes, then corrected myself. I told her he knew about the abortion and the implant. He did not yet know that she had warned me to tell him. Don't make me the good person in your confession, she said. I kept your secret too. I asked if she would speak to Daniel. She refused. If he calls me, I'll answer whatever he asks. I'm not helping you arrange how he learns this. It was the first boundary anyone had given me that I did not try to negotiate. On Sunday, Daniel arrived at 1 in the afternoon. He did not enter through the garage as he usually did. He rang the front doorbell. We sat in the living room. He chose the chair farthest from the sofa and kept his coat on. I told him I had withdrawn the application and had not tried to preserve our place. I told him I had deleted an email that tried to turn my fear into an excuse. He listened without praising me. Then he asked a question I had not prepared for. If I say I still need to be a father, what are you going to say? My first impulse was to say we could reconsider. I felt the word adoption rise again, ready to purchase another week of marriage. I hated how familiar it felt. I would say you can't do that with me, I said. Daniel's mouth tightened. He looked toward the window until he could speak. That is the first answer you've given me that doesn't ask me to wait. It did not bring him closer. It made the distance between us honest. He said he wanted a separation with no deadline attached. He was not promising to return, and he was not making a final decision that day. He would keep paying his share of the mortgage for 3 months while we decided whether to sell. He wanted our contact limited to practical matters unless he asked for more. I agreed. Then I ruined even that small moment by asking whether he still loved me. Daniel looked tired rather than angry. Love is why I waited, he said. It is not a reason to keep waiting now. After he left, I told our families the truth. I did not give them medical details. I said I had ended a pregnancy without telling Daniel, then misled him for 7 years about wanting children. I said Daniel had not pressured me into the abortion and had not known it happened. I asked them not to contact him for explanations he did not owe. My mother cried and asked how I could keep something like that from my husband. Daniel's sister, Priya, replied with one sentence. I hope you understand that the years are what took his choice away. I did understand it by then. Understanding did not repair it. The house became quiet in ways I had not expected. Daniel had always played public radio while cooking. He left cabinet doors open. He charged his phone in the wrong room and asked me to call it. I used to complain about all 3 things. Without them, the rooms felt staged for a life that had never arrived. Marcus checked on me once. He did not ask if I was okay. He asked if I was sober. I said yes. He told me Daniel had asked him not to report where he went or what he said. Then Marcus added, don't turn respecting that into a performance for him. So I stopped sending Daniel updates about how much I was changing. I stopped measuring honesty by whether he witnessed it. 6 weeks passed before he asked to meet again. We chose a bench beside the river downtown. It was cold enough that neither of us would stay longer than necessary. Daniel looked thinner. He had cut his hair. Those ordinary changes made the separation feel more real than the empty half of our closet. He told me the Denver program had contacted him again. The director remembered him and wanted to know if he would apply for the next term. Daniel had not decided. He wanted me to hear about it from him before our families did. My stomach dropped. For years, Denver had been our private example of how responsible we were. We had stayed for the family we claimed to be building. Now the offer had returned without me in it. I said he should apply if he wanted it. I'm not asking permission, he said. I know. That answer was harder than it sounds. I had built our marriage by turning his choices into questions I could manage. Sitting on that bench, I had to let his future remain his even when it frightened me. He asked whether I regretted the abortion. I knew there was an answer that might sound like love. I could say I regretted it every day. I could imagine a 7-year-old child and cry over birthdays that never happened, but that would have been another performance. I don't regret deciding not to continue the pregnancy, I said. I regret making that decision in secret and then using a child I never wanted to keep you married to me. Daniel nodded once, his eyes filled, but he did not look away. I needed to know whether you could say that without changing it for me, he said. We sat there until the wind pushed dead leaves against our shoes. He did apply to Denver. He also asked me to begin preparing the house for sale. Neither choice was presented as punishment. That made them harder to dismiss. Punishment would have allowed me to make him the cruel one. Instead, he was simply refusing to build the next part of his life around a promise I had never meant. It has been 4 months since the dinner. Daniel and I are still married. We do not live together. He has not told me whether separation will become divorce, and I have stopped asking him to decide on a schedule that makes my fear easier. If he accepts Denver, he will leave in the summer. If he still wants to pursue fatherhood, he says he will decide what that means after he has a life he trusts again. I am not part of that decision. Last week, the adoption agency mailed back a few original documents we had submitted. The blue folder was included because Daniel had asked them to return everything to our address. His signature was still crossed out. Mine was still waiting on the line below it. For a long time, I stood at the kitchen island with a pen in my hand. The old part of me wanted to sign, not because I wanted a child, but because a completed page looked less final than an empty one. I put the pen away. I placed the folder in the box of Daniel's mail and sealed it without adding a letter. Then I texted him that the agency documents had arrived and asked where he wanted them sent. He replied with an address in Denver. That was how I learned he had accepted the job. I read the message twice, then I wrote, "I'll send them tomorrow." There was no plea beneath it, no promise, no someday. The next morning, I carried the sealed box to the post office. The clerk put it on the scale, printed the label, and asked whether there was anything fragile inside. I almost said yes. Instead, I said documents. She slid the box behind the counter, and for once I let something leave because it no longer belonged to me.